There's a bridge on Highway 16 between Bandera and Medina that nobody talks about after dark. I'm not saying it's haunted, I don't use that word. 28 years wearing a badge in Bandera County, and I never once wrote haunted in a report. But I'll tell you this, I don't drive that stretch anymore. Not since October of '03. I was working graveyard, solo patrol. Most nights out there it's nothing, deer on the shoulder, maybe a busted fence letting cattle wander onto the 2-lane. Hill country gets real quiet after midnight. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own engine ticking at a red light in town, and once you're past the last gas station headed south, it's just you and the cedar and the limestone cuts dropping away into the dark. I had my coffee from the Stripes in Bandera. Black, 2 sugars. Radio was playing something. I don't remember what. Maybe Merle. Maybe nothing. You stop hearing it after a while. You just drive. The call came in around 3 in the morning. Dispatch said a passing trucker on CB had radioed in a vehicle accident on the SH-16 bridge over the Medina River. No 911 call, no cell phone report, just a trucker who said he saw a car wrapped around the guardrail and kept driving because, well, he said it didn't look right. That's what he told the dispatcher. It didn't look right. She asked him to clarify and he said he didn't want to, and then he was gone. I was maybe 8 minutes out. Took the curve slow because the road hugs the canyon wall there and there's no shoulder. Just limestone on one side and a 40-foot drop to the river on the other. You come around the last bend and the bridge is right there. Narrow, 2 lanes, rusted guardrails from the 70s that wouldn't stop a shopping cart. I saw the car from about 200 yards. Headlights still on. Both of them cutting straight out into the dark over the river. The rear end was pushed up against the guardrail on the east side, passenger side all crumpled in. Metal folded like tinfoil. I pulled up behind it, hit my overheads, and just sat there for a second. Something was off. I couldn't name it yet. Patrol teaches you that, the feeling before the reason. Your body knows before your brain catches up. I unsnapped my holster. Didn't draw, just unsnapped. Grabbed my mag light. Stepped out. The engine was running. That was the first wrong thing. Car's wrapped around a guardrail hard enough to crush the passenger side flat, and the engine's idling like it's parked at a drive-thru. Smooth. No knocking, no hiss from a busted radiator. Just that low, steady rumble. I walked up along the driver's side, and that's when I stopped. The driver's side was perfect. I don't mean less damaged. I mean factory perfect. No dents, no scratches. The paint was clean. The mirror was intact. The window was up and not cracked. It looked like someone had cut the car in half and welded a showroom door onto a wreck. I shined my light through the driver's window. Empty. Nobody in the front, nobody in the back. Seats looked fine. Dashboard wasn't cracked. Steering wheel straight. But the passenger side, the side I could see from outside, was smashed to hell. From the inside it looked normal. Like the damage only existed on the outside. The radio was on. Not music. Some kind of voice. Low, repeating. I couldn't make out the words through the glass. I pressed my ear closer to the window, and the voice stopped. Just dead air. Then static. Then nothing. I stepped back and keyed my shoulder mic. Dispatch, I'm 1097 at the SH-16 bridge. Single vehicle, heavy damage passenger side, no occupants visible. Engine running. Requesting tow and a second unit. Dispatch copied. Said the nearest unit was 20 minutes out. Tow truck maybe 30. I stood there on that bridge with my flashlight and my coffee going cold in the cruiser and that car just idling, and the Medina River running black underneath us. No moon that night, not even a sliver. The voice on the radio started again, real quiet, like someone whispering into a tin can from very far away. I tried the driver's door, wouldn't open. Not stuck, fused. I ran my flashlight along the seam where the door met the frame, and There was no seam. The metal of the door and the metal of the guardrail behind it had become the same piece, like they'd been poured together. I crouched down and looked underneath. Same thing. The rocker panel and the railing were one continuous piece of steel. No weld marks, no bolts, no sign that two separate objects had ever existed there. I've worked wrecks where cars wrap around poles and the metal deforms, sure, but the metal doesn't merge. It doesn't become one thing. That's not how collisions work. That's not how anything works. I went around to the passenger side. The door was crushed inward about 2 feet, but the window had blown out. Enough room to lean in with my mag light. I braced my hand on the crumpled frame and shined the light across the interior. That's when I saw the handprints on the windshield. 6 of them, on the inside of the glass, pressed outward. You could tell by the way the palm and fingers spread. They were pushing out, not pulling in. Like someone inside the car had pressed both hands flat against the windshield and shoved. Hard. The prints were wet, not condensation, something thicker. They caught the light wrong, too glossy, like oil. I counted them again. 6 prints. 2 hands would make 2, maybe 4 if they repositioned. 6 meant I didn't finish that thought, didn't want to. The passenger seat had blood on it, but it wasn't splatter, wasn't a smear, it was a circle. Perfect circle, maybe 8 inches across, sitting right in the center of the seat cushion, dark red, almost black. The edges were so clean they looked cut with a compass. No drips, no trail leading to it or away from it, just a circle of blood on a seat in an empty car. I pulled back out of the window and stood up. My hands were shaking, not from cold. Keyed my mic again. "Dispatch, I need you to run a plate for me." I read off the tag number, Texas plate, but the sticker, registration sticker on the windshield. I had to look twice. The expiration date said March 1988. Dispatch came back in about 2 minutes. The silence on that bridge felt a lot longer. Unit 114, that plate comes back to a 1985 Oldsmobile Cutlass, blue over white. Registered to a Margaret Ann Dillard, last address, Rural Route 3, Medina, Texas. I almost laughed, because the car in front of me was a blue over white Cutlass, 85 or 86. I hadn't even thought about the make and model until she said it. You don't at 3 in the morning. You just see car and wreck and your brain fills in the rest later. "Dispatch, what's the status on that registration?" "Showing expired. Last renewed February 1987. Owner is..." Hold on. Long pause. "Owner is listed as deceased. October 19th, 1987, Bandera County." I stared at the car. The engine was still running. Headlights still on. A dead woman's car, registration 16 years expired, engine warm, idling on the same bridge where... "Dispatch, can you pull the incident report for that date? October 19th, 87, same location?" Another pause. Then, Unit 114, I'm showing a single vehicle accident. SH-16 bridge over Medina River. Vehicle left the roadway and entered the water. Driver Margaret Ann Dillard, age 31. Body not recovered. Not recovered, meaning she went into that black water and never came back up. The radio in the Cutlass changed. I heard it through the blown-out passenger window. The whispering voice was gone. Now it was something else, clearer. A man's voice, flat and monotone, reading numbers and codes. It took me about 4 seconds to recognize the format. It was a crash report. The voice was reading a crash report. Unit number, date, time, location, vehicle description, damage assessment. Every detail matched what I was looking at. And the voice was mine. I don't mean it sounded like me. I mean it was me, my cadence, my accent, the way I drop the G on words ending in ing, the way I say guardrail like guardrail instead of running it together. It was my voice reading a report I hadn't written yet, describing a scene I was standing in right now. I reached through the passenger window and turned the radio knob. Off. The voice kept going. Same flat tone, same words, rolling through the damage assessment section now. Passenger side impact consistent with high-speed lateral collision with fixed object. Driver side structurally intact. No occupant located. The sound wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from inside the dashboard, behind the plastic, like someone had crawled in there and was reading into the wiring. I backed away from the car, fast. My boot caught the guardrail and I almost went over the side, 40 feet down to the Medina in the dark. I grabbed the railing and steadied myself and just stood there, breathing hard, flashlight beams shaking across the bridge deck. That's when Eddie's tow truck came around the bend. Big flatbed, amber lights spinning. He pulled up behind my cruiser and climbed out. Eddie Garza ran the only tow service in Bandera County at that hour. I'd called him to 100 wrecks. Hell of a spot for it, he said, looking at the cutlass. Then he tilted his head. That the radio? So he heard it too. That helped and didn't help at the same time. Don't worry about it, I said. Just hook it up. Pant, Eddie walked around the car with his chains, sizing up the pull. He stopped at the driver's side and ran his hand along the seam, the place where the door and the guardrail became one. He looked at me, didn't say anything, didn't need to. He hooked the rear axle, standard pull, wrapped the chains, tightened the winch, signaled me to back my cruiser up for clearance. When the winch engaged and the chains went taut, the cutlass shuddered once. Then everything stopped. Engine died. Headlights off. The voice cut out mid-sentence. It was reading the tow information, Eddie's name and company, his license number. It stopped right in the middle of his address. The bridge went dark except for Eddie's amber lights and my overheads. The river below was silent. No current sound, no frogs, nothing. Just the winch motor whining and the chain links clinking. Eddie dragged the car free of the guardrail. The metal separated clean, no tearing, no screeching. Just released. Like it had been held together by agreement, and the agreement ended. The guardrail underneath was smooth. No damage, no scrape marks, no paint transfer, like nothing had ever touched it. We loaded the cutlass onto the flatbed without speaking. Eddie strapped it down, gave me a nod, and drove off toward town. I stood on that bridge for another 10 minutes. Couldn't make myself leave. I wrote the report the next morning, typed it up on the old IBM at the station. When I got to the damage assessment, I stopped typing. The words on my screen were the exact words the radio had spoken. Not close. Exact. Same phrasing, same order. I hadn't planned those sentences. They just came out of my fingers the same way they'd come out of that dashboard. I went back to the bridge that afternoon. Took my Polaroid camera. I always photographed fatal scenes. Habit from my first supervisor, Sergeant Lyle. Take the picture, he'd say. The picture don't lie. I shot the guardrail where the car had been. Shot the bridge deck. Shot the spot where the headlights had been pointing out over the river. When the photos developed, everything looked right, except one. The shot of the windshield from the night before. I'd taken it through the blown-out passenger window while the car was still on the bridge. 6 handprints pressed outward. But in the afternoon Polaroid, the handprints had moved. They were on the driver's side of the windshield now, clustered low, near the bottom, closer to where I had been standing when I leaned in with my flashlight. I put the photo in the shoebox under my bed with all the others. Checked it again a week later. The prints had moved again. Bottom right corner of the windshield. Lowest point, like they were sliding down, like something behind the glass was sinking. My granddaughter found that shoebox 3 years ago. She looked through maybe a dozen photos before she got to that one. I don't know what she saw. She put the lid back on and she left, and she hasn't been back since. I check the photo sometimes, maybe twice a year. The handprints are still moving. Last time I looked, they were at the very bottom edge of the glass, almost off the frame entirely. I keep waiting for the day I open that box and the windshield in the photo is clean. No prints at all. Because that'll mean whatever was pressing against the glass